Today, let's talk about something that is part of every single home sale and home purchase, and that is negotiations. Negotiations are a huge part of what we do. It's a big part of our job because no matter whether you're buying or selling, every single deal means that you are going to have to negotiate with another party to get a deal done. And we take training in this. It's something that we have a lot of expertise in. We do it all the time. And so today I'm going to share with you some tips that will help you, because I think if you're more prepared going into a negotiation and you know what to expect, you can make smarter decisions, and also teach you how to be a better negotiator. So today let's talk about real estate negotiation. We've got tips, tricks, and best practices. Now first, I'll share the number one thing that kills negotiations, probably in everything, but definitely in real estate, and that is emotions. Buying or selling a home, it's a really big financial purchase, and people sometimes tend to be a little emotional about it. One thing we always say is kind of when you're going through the sale or purchase of a home, you know, your emotions are going to do this. There are going to be times you're really excited. There are going to be times that you're frustrated. It is our job for our emotions to stay here, because when you have a really emotional buyer, really emotional seller, the odds that you are going to come together at some point and reach an agreement that everybody is happy with and agrees to move forward with, it works a lot better when you have somebody in it who is neutral, who is not emotionally tied to it, and who can help guide you during those highs and lows and kind of bring you back to a common sense place to move forward. Look, you really need to try your best to set emotions aside when you're negotiating in real estate. At the very beginning, think, what do I want to get out of this? You know, if you're purchasing it, it's, you know, I need a home that has X, Y, and Z for at least this amount of, or not more than this amount of money. If you're a home seller, it's okay. Maybe I want to get moved before school starts, or I want to make sure that I net X amount of dollars for my home. Think about what it is that you want to get out of it, and then don't get sidetracked whenever you're going through negotiations by those emotions. So if they respond in a way that you don't like, and it maybe irritates you, or you get annoyed, or you think the other side is being unreasonable, always come back to, well, but wait, am I getting what I said I wanted in the very beginning? And if I'm not, how close am I? Can we reach an agreement to get that done? Remember, both sides have to be happy enough to agree to move forward. You can't get a deal done with only one side. So the odds are you are not going to get every single thing you want without having to concede on some other things, because the other party is going to be like, well, no, you're getting everything you want, I'm not getting anything I want, and they're going to walk away. So we have to at least be agreeable enough, get them to a place where we want to get as much of what you want as we can, but also recognize you're going to have to keep that other person happy enough so that they're going to agree to move forward. So my number one tip, just overall, have your emotions, let it out, scream into a pillow, do whatever you need to do. And then when it's time to make decisions, really kind of take the emotion out of it, realize this is a financial transaction, focus on the details and the terms, and leave emotion at the door. Try to use common sense to get things done. So let's start with understanding the other party's needs. Like I just said, you're gonna have to get them happy enough to move forward. And one of the ways you can do that is by finding out as much as you can about their situation and about what their needs are. So for example, if I am representing you as a buyer and we find a home you like, you want to make an offer, we are not just going to write an offer and send it to them without having a conversation first. I'm going to pick up the phone, I'm going to call that listing agent, and I'm going to start asking questions. Why are they moving? Is there a certain timeline that they need? What are the things that are most important to them? I want to help you structure a deal that's most likely to get accepted, not necessarily what you think might be the best terms, because those terms may not matter that much to the seller. So maybe the seller isn't all about their bottom line. What really matters to them is they need to be able to lease the home back for 2 weeks, because they're going to be homeless otherwise in between while maybe they're waiting on their next closing. So that closing date and a lease back might be the most important thing. So instead of offering them more money in sales price, let's offer them a lease back so they can stay in the home. You never know unless you ask. And a good negotiator doesn't just make a blind offer. They really try to understand where the other party is coming from. That's a really smart move, because the more information you have, the more you can tweak your offer so it's going to be really attractive to them, while hopefully still getting the terms that you're happy with. So asking questions is one of the first things you should do when you start a negotiation. The next thing I would say is you need to kind of build a good rapport and trust with these people. If people don't like you, they're not going to want to work with you. They're not going to be as willing to bend on things. So I know some people, you know, they want to be bulldogs and they want to come in super aggressive. If you make the other side decide mad right out of the gate because maybe you're a buyer and you offered way less than what they're asking for the home, you know, almost insultingly low, or you're a seller and somebody made you a reasonable offer, but you were completely unreasonable in your response because you're trying to be a really aggressive negotiator. Well, that can instantly sour things. And once things turn sour, it's really hard to get people to work together. So being professional, making sure when I'm talking to that other agent that, you know, even if we haven't reached an agreement yet, we're not happy with their response or where they're at, keeping the tone professional and cooperative and trying to focus on the things that we do agree on. You want to build trust and let them know, like, okay, this is somebody that I can work with, and let's try to reach an agreement. When buyers and sellers offer things, the natural response is you want to give something back. So you can build rapport and trust by saying, hey, I know this is really important to you. This thing's really important to me. So I'm going to give in on your thing over here. And then I'm going to ask you to give in on this thing over here. Like, it's a give and take relationship. Then people don't feel taken advantage of. And they feel like, oh, okay, this person is being reasonable. They are trying to work together towards a solution. A lot of times it's just a series of like baby steps we have to take towards each other. So really maintaining good rapport, not being rude, not being super aggressive. Believe me, that's going to kill more deals than it's ever going to get done. Okay, the first thing I'm going to teach you about is called anchoring. So whoever goes first and sets that number out that first is really kind of dropping the anchor. And what that means is you're gonna negotiate some, but people don't generally expect you to move a huge amount from where that first anchor is. So if you're a seller, that anchor is your list price. What are you putting the home out there for sale? If you price it really high, people aren't going to make you an offer because they're going to think, well, they started here. There's no way they're going to be willing to come way down here. And so they just won't even make you an offer because you set your anchor too high. Same thing on the buy side. If you set your anchor too low, I've seen sellers say, you know what, we're just not even going to counter. Like, we think we're so far apart that we're never going to get anywhere. So just remember that where you start matters. People always think, oh, I want to start low or I want to start high, so I have room to negotiate in. That's okay a little bit, but just know that wherever you are putting that first number out there, people are only going to budge so much off of that number. We don't see these huge swings in numbers when we're negotiating on real estate. So that anchor, where you start, really matters. The second one is what I like to call just the sound logic principle. It's really hard to argue with things that are logical. So base your decisions on data. If I'm making an offer on your home and I come to you and I say, and look, we based it on this sales data from your neighborhood, and that is where we arrived at this number. You know, we didn't just pick a number arbitrarily. Like, we actually did some research and this is what we based it on. Makes it a lot harder to argue against that number when there's data there to support it. So data, research, anything you have that helps justify what you're asking for, that's what we call the sound logic principle. And it's really hard to argue with something that is very logical. And then the other thing I will touch on is time. Time can kill deals. If you let too much time go by, I've seen buyers walk away. If sellers are taking too long to respond, vice versa. You don't want to let too much time go by, but you can also use time to your advantage. So when you do make an offer, you can say, and we would like to have a response by 5 p.m. today or noon tomorrow. You put kind of a deadline on it. So then you're forcing the other party to take action. You're not going to let them just sit back and let all this time go by. So that is something that you can use as a negotiation tactic. Time sometimes can be a really powerful tool. Another thing that I would recommend is when you get a really unreasonable, sometimes we call it a lowball offer, how to respond. And like I mentioned earlier, your instinct is going to be to react emotionally or to get angry or upset, maybe get defensive. And like I said before, the best way to get through those is to stay calm and really try to focus on what each party's needs are. Ask some questions. If they send you something that you feel is really unreasonable, ask for the reasons why, because they might have actually had legitimate reasons for asking for what they did. But if they didn't communicate those to you, you just see it as this really unreasonable ask when maybe they did have some data or information that led them to ask for that. So don't get defensive. Try to keep emotion out of it. Remain, professional and calm. Go back, see what's important to them, where they came to that conclusion from, and see if there's maybe something that you can give on that makes them feel a little better about that thing. Let's talk about negotiating repairs, because we negotiate a lot of things in a contract. It isn't just the sales price, which is what people think it is. There are all the terms of the offer, the closing date, who's paying for the appraisal, the survey, compensation section can be in there negotiated. We're going to negotiate repairs. If we have an appraisal issue, we're going to negotiate maybe again over an appraisal. So there are a lot of negotiations that take place throughout this whole process, but I want to talk specifically about repair negotiations. So I have said in buyer videos before that you need to be realistic when you're buying a home. A home is not going to be completely free of any defects. Homes are, they age, things go wrong. Some things are working properly, but an inspector just might note it and say that they recommend something else. That doesn't mean that a repair necessarily needs to be made. Repair negotiations are where we see a lot of deals fall apart. And I will say, my recommendation when it comes to repairs is always to do a credit. Take what you want to get fixed, get quotes for what those items are going to cost. It is so much cleaner and simpler to say, Mr. Seller, I would like for you to give me $3,000 to cover these items, than it is to say, I want you to fix 7 different things. You don't get to pick who the contractors are. They may not be fixed to your liking. They may not have warranties or things like that you care about. Sellers, a lot of times, would prefer to not have to do anything. They would really just rather give you money. So whenever you are negotiating, when it comes to repairs, I always recommend ask for a credit and take care of those repairs yourself versus asking the other party to do them. It's just much cleaner, simpler, and easier. Okay, so let's talk about closing the deal. So both parties have maybe given a few concessions. They've gotten to a point where they want to move forward. The next steps are really important because expectations are everything in a negotiation. You want to make sure that you have set expectations correctly, because if something happens that somebody didn't expect, that's when things can go awry. So whatever you have agreed to, you want to make sure that it is clearly documented in writing and that everybody has signed off on it. Be as specific as you need to be to make sure that there's no gray area, that everybody is very clear on what's going to happen next. And then it's the job of both parties to go out and make those things happen. It takes both parties working together to get to the closing table. So make sure it's outlined specifically, it's in writing, it's documented. Like I said, credits are way easier than repairs, but whatever it is, make sure that it is outlined very clearly and everybody has signed off on it, because that is where I see the most issues come up when one party thought, well, I thought you were doing this, and the other party thought, well, no, I meant I was going to do this, and there's a misunderstanding. Sometimes that's how deals fall apart. So it's very important to make sure the expectations are set very clearly in writing, so there's no discrepancy. You don't have to rely on your memory from what you said 3 weeks ago. You have it there documented and you can go back and get it all signed off on. So there you go. Those are just some tips when it comes to negotiating specifically in real estate. It takes place in every single home sale and home purchase. You have to negotiate something, all right? And like I mentioned before, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. It isn't just sales price, which is what I think most people assume that it is. So really important to get with an agent who is skilled, who is experienced, who has done a lot of transactions. So then they've seen things, they know what to expect when they're out there working in the field. They can be a really good guide for you, help you neutralize those emotions, kind of bring you back to what makes the most sense, what are you happy with going forward, and help you get that deal done. As always, if you ever have questions or need help with anything real estate related, especially negotiations, we are always here to help. Just feel free to reach out.